Hawthorne Lane was quiet. The houses were pristine, lawns were manicured. It was the picture of suburban tranquility. But at the end of the lane stood a house. It was shrouded in shadow even on the sunniest days. Locals whispered tales of strange occurrences and restless spirits. They avoided the house at all costs. It remained empty, year after year, a silent monument to some unseen terror. Mike and Sarah were young and optimistic. They had been searching for the perfect home for months, and this one seemed to tick all the boxes. It was more than just a house. It was a fresh start, a place where they could build their future together. The first few weeks were uneventful. The house seemed like any other, with its creaks and groans. Then the whispers began, soft, indistinct murmurs that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. At first they were barely noticeable, like a distant echo, but soon they grew louder, more insistent. Objects moved inexplicably, as if guided by unseen hands. A book misplaced, a glass overturned. These small disturbances became a daily occurrence. The once orderly bookshelf now stood in disarray, with books scattered across the floor. Footsteps echoed in the hallway at night. They were heavy, deliberate steps, yet no one was there. The sound would start softly, then grow louder, as if someone was approaching. Heavy, deliberate steps, yet no one was there. The sensation of being followed was inescapable. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the curtains seemed to carry a hidden message.
Mike, did you hear that? It feels like someone is watching us. The feeling of being observed was constant, an unshakable presence that lingered in every corner of the house.
It's probably just the house settling, Sarah. Don't worry about it. Mike tried to reassure her, but even he couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease.
Sarah felt a coldness. It wasn't just the chill of the night air, but a deeper, more penetrating cold that seemed to seep into her very bones. An unseen presence watching their every move. The shadows seemed to shift and change, taking on forms that were almost but not quite human. Mike dismissed her concerns, attributing it to the stress of the move. He tried to rationalize the events, but the evidence was mounting. But doubt began to creep into his mind. The whispers, the footsteps, the cold, they were too consistent, too real to be mere figments of their imagination. The house held secrets, and it seemed determined to reveal them, one whisper at a time. One evening, Sarah ventured into the basement. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of mildew and decay. A chill ran down her spine. She felt a presence, something dark and malevolent. As she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of a figure in an old, tarnished mirror. A tall, shadowy figure, with eyes that seemed to burn with an unholy light.
Oh my God!
She gasped, but the figure was gone. She fled the basement, her heart pounding in her chest. Unearthing the past.
I could no longer ignore the strange occurrences. I had to know more, so I began to research the history of the house.
He discovered that the previous owner was a recluse, a man obsessed with the occult.
He had vanished without a trace, leaving behind strange symbols and artifacts scattered throughout the house.
Mike realized with growing horror that they had stumbled into something sinister. The house was not haunted by the dead. It was a conduit for something far more ancient and evil. The ritual. Desperate, Mike sought the help of a local historian, an expert in the occult.
I examined the symbols and artifacts. My face must have looked grim as I explained that the previous owner had been attempting to open a portal to another dimension, a dimension of darkness and shadow.
The ritual had gone horribly wrong. The entity he had summoned remained trapped within the house, feeding on the fear and energy of its inhabitants. The historian warned them to leave the house immediately.
But we're not going anywhere. We need to fight back.
Exactly. Let's gather what we need for the cleansing ritual.
As they began the incantation, the house seemed to come alive. The air crackled with energy. The shadows danced and swirled. And then the entity revealed itself. It was a grotesque mockery of a human form. The figure stood in the dimly lit room, its presence a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked within. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the faint sound of its laboured breathing. Shadows danced on the walls, creating an eerie, almost hypnotic effect that made it hard to look away. Its eyes glowed with an eerie, malevolent light. They seemed to pierce through the darkness, locking onto Sarah with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. The malevolent glow was not just a reflection of light, but a manifestation of the entity's dark intentions. It was as if the very essence of evil was staring back at her, daring her to make a move.
Oh my God, it's coming right at me! Sarah's voice trembled with fear as she backed away, her eyes wide with terror. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, each beat echoing in her ears like a drum. The entity moved with a slow, deliberate pace, savoring the fear it was causing.
It lunged at Sarah, its claws outstretched. The sudden movement caught her off guard, and she stumbled backward, her mind racing to find a way out. The claws, sharp and menacing, seemed to reach out for her, promising pain and suffering.
No, Sarah. Get down. Mike's voice cut through the chaos, a desperate plea for her to avoid the impending danger. He could see the terror in her eyes, and he knew he had to act fast.
Mike pushed her aside, and the entity struck him instead. The force of the blow sent him sprawling to the ground, pain radiating through his body. He could feel the darkness closing in, but he refused to let it take him. Mike cried out in pain as a searing pain shot through his body. The agony was almost unbearable, but he gritted his teeth and fought to stay conscious. He knew that if he gave in, the entity would win, but he refused to give in. With every ounce of strength he had left, he pushed himself to his feet, determined to protect Sarah at all costs. The entity loomed over him, its eyes glowing with malevolent glee.
I won't let you win. Mike's voice was filled with defiance, a declaration of his will to fight. He could feel the fear and anger boiling inside him, fueling his determination to stand his ground.
He grabbed the entity with all his strength. The struggle was intense, each moment feeling like an eternity. The entity's claws dug into his flesh, but he held on, refusing to let go. He channeled all his anger, all his fear, into one final, desperate act of defiance. With a primal scream, he summoned every bit of energy he had left, determined to banish the darkness once and for all. The room seemed to vibrate with the intensity of his will, and for a moment it felt like time itself had stopped. He slammed the entity into the heart of the ritual circle. The air exploded with blinding light and deafening sound. The house shook to its very foundations. And then, silence. The entity was gone. The shadows receded. The house was still and quiet once more.
Mike, it's over. We did it.
Yeah, we did. It's finally over.